start off by telling you that I'm here on my own recognizance after being released from the West Hollywood jail for running from a stop and frisk, which was great timing for the theme of this show. Now, I live in Los Angeles and I don't own a car. I'm a pedestrian. That makes me a suspect. I get stopped and frisked a lot. And it's a good thing, too, because I look kind of shady for a white guy. I was coming from an acting class on this night, and I decided to cut through the park on my way home. This was a bad idea. There was a mugger laying in wait wearing a West Hollywood sheriff's uniform. As I entered the park, I noticed there was a sheriff's patrol car idling to the right of the path to cut through the park. Like a troll under a bridge. Excuse me, you're in front of my camera there. How can I promote myself? No, have your wine. It's very important. You know, if anybody wants to get up while I'm on stage and go to the bar, I think this would be a great time to do it. So anyway, I was coming from an acting class on this particular night, and I decided to cut through the park, as I said, and there was a sheriff's car, like, right off to the side. There's a path that goes right through the park. He was off to the side here. As I entered the park, I noticed him, and he nodded to me, and I nodded to him, and I just went about my business. Now, as I passed him, he started to follow me, and I thought he wanted to get on the path. So I stood off the path, and I went like that, waved him through. He stopped. He didn't want to get on the path. He wanted me to keep going. So I got back on the path and started walking again. As far as I could tell, I was proceeding into the park with his permission. He started following me again, as I said, exhibiting predatory behavior, as the police often do. What I did not know, what the sheriff did not tell me, was the park closed at 10. Me and about 12 squirrels were breaking the law. When I started walking again, the sheriff pulled up next to me and began asking me questions. I had fallen into a stop and frisk. The sheriff didn't tell me the park was closed because he wanted me in the park to create probable cause to stop and frisk me. He was corrupting the law for his own unconstitutional purposes. He never identified the reason he was stopping me. "Where are you going?" he asked. "Home," I said. "Where's that?" I told him the name of the street. Then he asked me another question. I can't tell you what it was. I stopped listening. He repeated the question. I remained silent. At this point, I knew it wasn't going to end well. I took off running. Why did I run? I hadn't done anything. But it's been my experience after living in Los Angeles for over 20 years that really doesn't matter. Not all, but a lot of the police in LA are bullies with badges and weren't necessarily at the top of their high school class. I wasn't doing anything the squirrel wasn't doing. I was gathering my nuts and getting the hell out of there. Do I need to retain a lawyer to be a pedestrian out in LA? Yes, I'm thinking of crossing Sunset Boulevard at 5:47. I'm going to have to advise you against doing that. The sheriff profiled me because I had long hair and I was wearing a long coat. He was convinced I was the drug lord of the park. But while he was profiling me, I was profiling him. The last time I got stopped and frisked by the West Hollywood Sheriff's Department, the sheriff got more frisky than a TSA agent. During this stop and frisk, I was sexually assaulted. My civil rights weren't the only thing being violated. During this stop and frisk, the sheriff asked me a series of questions that led me to believe he thought or hoped that I was a male prostitute. Now, I was in my mid to late 30s, so I guess I should have been flattered. But I was wearing a backpack, and he asked to frisk it. I let him. I was also wearing a penis. He asked to frisk that, but not in those words. He said, "I'm going to frisk you. Do you have any sharp objects in your pockets?" "No, I've been circumcised." When he put his hand in my left pocket, he went right. He was fondling me long enough to know that I didn't have testicular cancer. The West Hollywood Sheriff's Department had a new slogan that day: to protect and service. The thing to know if you ever have to run from the cops is that there are places a pedestrian can go in the park that a vehicle can't. Access is restricted by metal posts on the paved path, which makes fleeing the police an unconstitutional stop or frisk fun and easy. Once I had escaped the park and crossed the street, I stopped running, which was a big mistake. I probably shouldn't have run, but once I started running, I never should have stopped. But like I said, it was a fight or flight panic response. It was a flashback to a sexual assault by a West Hollywood sheriff. If I'd wanted to be molested, I would have gone to the airport. About 3/4 of the way down the block, the West Hollywood Sheriff's patrol car I had so easily eluded in the park pulled up next to me in a screeching halt. The sheriff jumped out of his vehicle and seemed extremely emotionally distressed. It would have been a bad time to run. Like comedy, running from the police is all about timing. I remained still. The sheriff grabbed my right arm from behind and pushed me towards the back hood of the nearest car. He said, "Move to the car and stand up against it." He pushed me down on the hood. I broke the fall with my left hand. A second sheriff had arrived and told me to spread my legs just like on TV in the strip club around the corner on Sunset. At this point, other sheriffs were arriving. Eventually, there would be up to 10 patrol cars swarming the street. They parked across both lanes with their lights flashing, and they shut down traffic. If West Hollywood owned a helicopter, I'm sure they would have used that there as well. Now, while one sheriff held my right cupped arm behind my back, the one from the park was on my left side, and he had his hand around my wrist. He said, "Put your hand behind your back." I said, "I have a shoulder injury." He then emptied half a bottle of pepper spray into my eyes, onto my glasses, my face, my hairs, and my clothes. He then repeated his order: "Put your left hand behind your back." Well, now the fact that he had assaulted me with half a can of pepper spray did not change the fact that my shoulder was in pain. I said, "I have a shoulder injury." He emptied the rest of the can in my eyes, my glasses, my face, my hair, and my clothes. Then he grabbed my arm and put it behind my back anyway, which he could have done without emptying the can of pepper spray into my face. I never resisted. This was just something he wanted to do. This is what bullies do. It's what thugs and cowards do. It's what the police in America do to subjugate the population. Now, for those of you who have not had the pleasure of being assaulted by your local police, when you are assaulted with pepper spray, you're immediately blinded. Mucus glands are stimulated to try to relieve the body of the alien chemical combination that has attacked their host. My eyes teared up and my nose started to run. Now, they already had me in cuffs, so I said, "Is somebody going to wash these chemicals out of my eyes?" One of the sheriffs, I couldn't tell you which one because I was blinded, said, "The fire department is coming. They'll wash it out." This seemed reasonable. The fire department often administers first aid, and there's a station a couple blocks away. Chemical weapons are frowned on in warfare, but I say kudos to the West Hollywood police for not reading the Geneva Convention. They're still working on the Constitution. Now, I was thrown in the backseat of the patrol car, and the doors and windows were closed. Not even a window was cracked, which a civilized person wouldn't do to a dog, although you might do it to a squirrel if he was in the park after 10. Now, the thing you should know about pepper spray in enclosed spaces is that it recirculates, it intensifies. It does not dissipate. The sheriffs knew this. They were deliberately torturing. To drive in the point, the backseat door opened on the driver's side, and one of the sheriffs jumped in the car next to me. I assume it was the punk from the park, although through his amazing grace, I was blind and could not see. He proceeded to ask me a series of questions, culminating with, "Were you in the park?" He was essentially questioning me under torture to get me to say I was in the park after 10. That's right, they called me Jimmy the Squirrel, Cool Hand Tripp, the scourge of the park. I was expecting them to waterboard me to get me to confess that I was a scofflaw, which I am not. I answered his first couple of questions, which I do not recall. either the questions or the answers. My senses were still reeling from the shock and awe of the police swarm and the gas attack. I told them, I cannot make a statement in this condition. At no time during my incarceration was I read my Miranda rights. They just kept saying over and over again that I was a drug dealer. Where are the drugs? People who look like you usually have drugs. Really? Do you know any people who look like me? This is something I did not say. I said, I'm just a citizen. This became my mantra for the night. I'm just a citizen. Profiling is not probable cause. The longer I remained in the car, the more torturous the recirculating gas became. We must have remained in that area for at least an hour. Like I said, sheriffs swarmed. They were probably canvassing the area for this dash I must have surely dropped. They were stupid, but they were honestly stupid. They couldn't fathom why anyone would run from a stop and frisk. Don't you want to be molested? Only by the TSA. They have a special touch. Now, at some point, another sheriff stuck his head in, and I repeated my request to have my eyes washed out. Oh, yeah, a medic is coming, he said. No medic is coming. At one point, I wanted to kick out one of the windows, but that would not have helped my situation. All I could do was scream, and that's what I did. Now, it wasn't a scream to accomplish anything. It was not a call for help. It was a venting. Now, the screaming didn't do anything, so I decided to have a seizure. I figured if I had a seizure, they'd have to open up the doors and let some fresh air in. So I had a seizure. You know, but unfortunately, they had already seen my SAG card. The sheriff stuck her head in the front door and said, "Are you all right?" I didn't respond. I didn't really sell this seizure. I just lay there, limp. Nobody opened the back door or rolled down the window. And after a short interval, I had a second seizure. What the hell? With similar results. You know, I didn't really sell it all the way through. You know, an actor prepares, and I didn't have time to do research. You know? I should have paid more attention in that acting class. I'm usually good after the third or fourth take. I rarely get it on the first take. Now, 15 years ago, the West Hollywood sheriff thought I was a male prostitute. Now another West Hollywood sheriff thought I was a drug dealer. I'm like a Rorschach test for the police psychiatrist. You know, for the police department, rather. Psychiatrists show them a picture of James Tripp, and they all see something different. He's a male prostitute. He's a drug dealer. He's my father! But like everyone knows who administers this test, the answers say more about the observer than they do about the blot of ink. I asked for a third time for someone to wash the pepper spray out of my eyes. I was still blind, so I couldn't tell who said, "You can wash it out when you get to the station." I said, "Oh, that's great. You bring the disease, but you don't bring the cure." That's very professional. After being tortured in the back seat for an hour or more, the sheriff got in the car and took me to the West Hollywood Sheriff's Jail for processing. I was fingerprinted, and they took my mugshot. Now, it probably looks like that Nick Nolte mugshot where he was driving in a convertible, because, you know, my eyes were bound to be red, and my hair was all matted from that pepper spray. And I was not amused. I asked to wash this pepper spray off when I got to the station, but they told me I'd be able to wash it off when I got to my cell. I got put in a holding area while the arresting officer interviewed me from behind the glass barrier. He said I was lucky that it wasn't before the Rodney King beatings, because then they would have beat me up. Now, when the police beat you up, it's not assault or battery. You should know that. The sheriff who processed me during my release also gave me a similar warning that I was lucky I wasn't beaten. This is typical bully behavior. They put me in my own cell, and I tried to wash off the pepper spray to no avail. There was a tiny push-button cold water sink that was set up to be more of a drinking fountain. Trying to wash off the chemical just reactivated it. They wouldn't let me take a shower until the next afternoon, shortly before they released me. I had to sleep on my back. If I slept on my face or side, I would just be inhaling the pepper spray. It was freezing in the cell, and I couldn't use my coat because it had been doused in pepper spray. After almost 24 hours, I was given a court date and released on my own recognizance. The judge must have known how important it was for me to be here at this show tonight. Thank you, Judge. So what I learned from this was, once you decide to start running from the police, it's important to keep running. Don't stop just because you didn't do anything. Most people are guilty of not doing anything, but they're still guilty. I now have a record, and my fingerprints are on file. At least when I die, they'll be able to identify me. But from now on, when I go into a park, I'm going to have to wear gloves.